Today, I will be covering one of the most bizarre cases of someone who supposedly vanished into thin air, with a crazy truth to it at the end that nobody expected. Is it possible to disappear and to suddenly reappear 15 months later with no memory of what happened? Well, for 23-year-old Stephen Kubacki, this was somehow the case. Stephen, who was a college student studying history at Hope College in Holland, Michigan, which is a private Christian university near Lake Michigan, which is important for the story, of course. Stephen was an outgoing and active person who frequented outdoors. Stephen randomly disappeared in February of 1978 while on a solo cross-country skiing trip where he had planned to only be gone for one day at most, and which he never returned from. Amidst his abrupt disappearance, he was quickly reported to authorities. Upon their investigation, they found a 200-yard trail of the suspected footprints of Stephen surrounding the edge of Lake Michigan. Despite the evidence of Stephen, these footprints suddenly vanished as if they just stopped abruptly, or as like he vanished into thin air. The only thing of evidence that was found to attest to his whereabouts were his skis, his ski poles, and his backpack found nearby. It's almost to investigators as if he just vanished into the sky, like he just got taken, because there was absolutely no trace or footprints leading to where he might have gone. In regards to his location of vanishing, it was close to the lake. It was assumed by investigators that he had fallen into the lake and drowned, despite there not being many pieces of evidence supporting that theory, but it was the only plausible theory at the time of his disappearance. This was an understandable conclusion to come to since there was no real evidence on where he could have possibly gone. While it's possible that he might have disappeared by his own choice, which some speculate, given the natural stress of life of being a college student during his time of disappearance. At the time of his vanishing, as I mentioned, he was a college student nearing graduation at Hope College. This theory is also somewhat backed by the fact he decided to go out skiing alone, which I haven't really heard of anybody going skiing alone, as everybody knows skiing is potentially dangerous, hazardous, as you could get lost in the woods, fall into snow, or break a bone, which clearly he went by himself to possibly orchestrate something. It's also likely that Stephen had plenty of self-survival skills in the wilderness, as he's a frequent outdoorsman and he once climbed the mountains in Europe. Although Stephen does say that during the time once he reappeared, he does say that during the time of his disappearance he did not recall being under any emotional distress, saying, "My father was going to sign over our house to me," he said. "I had 3 courses at school and no trouble, and he left romance in Germany. There was no trouble with girls. I had a job lined up with the Holland Sentinel, which is a newspaper company." Throughout the entire investigation, his family still presumed him alive. Whichever manner of disappearance you choose to believe in, regardless, he claims to have woken up in a meadow in Pittsfield, Massachusetts 15 months later. It is estimated to be around 700 miles from his original disappearance site on Lake Michigan. He was found in good health, wearing new glasses, sneakers, a Wisconsin Marathon t-shirt, $40 in cash, and a backpack with maps and hitchhiking signs. As expected, to the public's disappointment, he had no recollection of the events transpired and how he got to this remote meadow in Massachusetts. Stephen claimed that he had suddenly woken up to find himself in the meadow 40 miles from the house of his father, John Kubacki. He was also under the impression that no time had passed at all, weirdly enough, and the only sort of real evidence that Stephen gave to his time away is that he had felt like he had done some running. For years, the truth of this case was only potentially known by Stephen. Despite this, he remained quiet for decades until he released a book detailing his testament of the truth. In his book, The Disappearance, Conspiracy, Revelation, The Extraordinary Disappearance of Stephen Kubacki, which was released 45 years later after he was found, he brought everything to light. He then drops the bomb. writing, "I have perfect recollection," then saying, "I was very rebellious and very curious and wanted to change the world and make it better. Like a typical teenager, I wrote about how the world needs more love." He then goes on to recount how himself and some others formed a conspiracy, a decision to make Kubaki disappear. He would use this time away to try and organize a form of resistance to the current power structures that the world held, while his supporting peers would go on to take positions of power in politics, religion, and finance to influence the world. He said, "I was about to do the unthinkable, the impossible, and I knew once I did it, my life would be changed forever. There was no going back." He claimed that this extremity was a calling from the universe and that he was destined to do this. At the time, he also attempted to join the French Foreign Legion, which is an elite, all-volunteer unit of the French army, where he witnessed a deadly beating, which in result led his group to break apart. Kubaki explained, "My mission was to go underground, start a resistance movement, and I tried to do that in different ways, but it was like I was peering into the abyss and becoming a very different person, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't become a sociopath. I couldn't become a killer. In a sense, I couldn't do it. I never did anything like that, but I was about to, and when push came to shove, I couldn't do it." 15 months after his plan to create a new world order began, he re-emerged. In attempts by the media to learn more, to protect himself and his family, he claimed amnesia and went on to start a new life where he took a job as a clinical psychologist. Despite the release of his book and a truth to his disappearance, many still question the validity of his story and the potential that he might have done it just for money. Regardless whether the truth he claims to be true is the real reason of his disappearance, Stephen Kubaki still vanished without a trace for 15 months, and to some truth has emerged, and to others the truth might never be revealed.